that's a problem. Hello everyone, I'm Jeff and welcome to my shop. This is part 2 of the Craftsman Drill Press Light Mount Fabrication video series. If you haven't seen part 1, click the link at the top of the screen. In this video, we're going to finish up the light mount. So continuing from part 1, the first thing we need to do is to strip some of the shielding off of the power cord so that we have about 6 inches, 5 to 6 inches of leads to play with. Now you'll notice on the bench here, I also have some spare 16 gauge wire there, green, white, and black. If you don't have any of that, you can cut about 1 foot off of your power cord and strip the shielding off of it and use that for some of the connecting wires that we're going to need. But like I said, all we're doing is stripping the shielding off of this. Next, we'll be installing the receptacle into the mount. And it's just a snap in, so super easy. And I'm going to install it so that the ground is facing away from the T. Like that. And next we're going to install the rubber grommet. Now the panel hole for this is supposed to be a 1/2 inch, and I think I went like a 1/16 of an inch smaller than it needed to be, so it was kind of a bear to get in here. But I like it to be really tight to hold that power cord and not let somebody just rip that power cord out of there. I guess it should be noted that at this point, or before this point, you could have painted the mount bracket if you wanted to, but it's not going to really be seen, so I didn't paint mine. But once we get that grommet in there, like so, then we can go ahead and install the power cable. So it needs to come in through the top, like so. And we just need it to come through the other side about 1/2 inch. Like that. Next, we'll install the hog ring on the shielded part of the power cable. And this acts as a wire stress relief so that you can't pull the power cable back through. And again, all these tools and all the parts that I have for this build are listed in the description of the video. Like so. All right, next we just need to fabricate or make 2 wires for the switch. So I've got this extra 16 gauge wire here. I'm going to cut a piece of black and a piece of white. They're about 5 inches long. And then we'll install female blade terminals on them. Now, if your switch doesn't have blade terminals, let's say you've got screws on your switch, then you need to install ring terminals so that you can just unscrew, slip the ring over the screw, and then screw it back in. But my switch has blade terminals on the bottom, so that's why we're using these. And then we'll strip the other end of that wire. We'll do the same thing with the white wire. And Then we'll install these two wires on the switch. And that's why we use blade terminals. And in truth, we could have just left the black wire from the power cord longer and just put a blade terminal on it, but it is what it is. Next, we're just dressing up some of the wiring coming from the receptacle. These wires are kind of long and we don't need them that long. So before we go any further, let's talk about the wiring diagram. So I tried to make this as simple as possible. Basically, you got the power cord, and then you've got the switch, and then you've got the lamp, and then you've got the receptacle. And then the connections you're going to be making are going to be the power cord to the switch, and then all the whites, and then all the blacks except for the power cord, and then all the grounds. So ignore that there's an assembled lamp below where I'm working. What I'm showing you here is that I'm making the ground wire because I had to disassemble all of that crap later on anyways. So just cut another piece of 16 gauge green, this time about 5 inches long, strip both ends, and we're going to install a ring terminal on one end. And that ring has to be big enough to fit over the threaded insert that goes in the lamp base. And then we crimp it. And I heat shrink it as well, but it didn't film that. So you should have something like this now. And if you do, then we're golden. Now, at this point, I started assembling everything, and I later realized that I should have done something at this point. So what should I have done? We're going to be angling that lamp at almost a 45-degree angle. So we're going to have to make some cuts in the bracket right there and right there. And my recommendation is you watch the entire video and then you go back and cut yours at this point, because I had to really work in some tight spaces when I had all this assembled trying to cut that. I also had to uninstall this threaded insert at that point as well. So Loctiting it right now was not the smartest idea. But after we got the threaded insert on there, then we put the ground loop terminal on there. And then we install the bracket into the hanger. And then install the lamp into the bracket and the hanger. And if you watch the whole video, it'll make sense later on why I'm telling you to go ahead and cut those brackets for the lamp now rather than when I did. And my dexterity is going wacky. All right, so we're going to slide that nut on there and then thread it on there. And that will assemble the entire assembly. And when you're doing this for the final time, you want to make sure you get that nut as tight as you can get it. So at this point, we are going to go ahead and start connecting some wires. So we'll start with the grounds because that's going to be the easiest. It's all 3 green wires. So we're just going to route those wires to where it seems natural for them to go. And that's the connection we're going to be working on. So you've got a ground coming from the power cable, a ground coming from the receptacle, and then a ground coming from the ground ring terminal. Cut that little nib off of there. Then we're going to twist those down a little better. Well, I don't like how that... These are end terminals and end terminal connectors, and I don't like how it's not fitting on there very well, so I'm just going to twist these wires together a little bit more, which is what you should do really anyways. And then slide that terminal on there, and then we'll crimp it in place. Like so. Just make sure it's on there good. We can tuck that out of the way. And then we'll start working on the whites. So we've got a white coming from the receptacle, a white coming from the power cord, and a white coming from the lamp. And I'll show you on the wiring diagram here in just a second where we're at. But this is what happens if you cut those wires too short. But I really didn't want a whole rat's nest of wires hanging out inside the drill press head, so I wanted them really short. So if you decide to leave yours longer, that's fine. You're just going to need to make sure that they're out of the way and they're not going to get caught up on anything inside the drill press or be rubbing on the light. So this is the connection we're looking at. Like I said, it's the white from the power cable, white from the receptacle, and the white from the lamp. We still have one white left, but that's on the switch. And that's not going to go in this connection. Make sure all that's nice and tight. Put another butt connector or end connector on there. And then crimp it down. It's got to go in that second jaw on the crimper so you can see how tight everything is to work with right here. I think I go ahead and crimp it a second time just to make sure it's nice and good and tight. So you may be asking yourself, well, why aren't you using wire nuts here? And because wire nuts can come off, and I don't like wire nuts. And these connections are permanent. And then we're good. Tuck that out of the way. Next, we have the black from the receptacle. And that is going to be connecting with the black from the lamp. That one there. And then it's going to connect with the white from the switch. So that lamp cord is a little long. I'm going to cut it, strip it. And this is the connection we're working on now. And then we need that white from the switch. And then the connector, and we'll crimp it. And that leaves us with one connection to make. And if you did what I suggested and watched the entire video before you start assembling yours, this connection here is completely unnecessary. If you had left the power cord black long enough to do this, so it needed to be probably about 10 inches long, maybe 12, you could have just put a blade terminal on the end of it and connected it directly to the switch. But I was making this up as I went along and didn't think of it until after watching all this footage. So it is what it is. This is the connection we're doing now. Now keep in mind that the length of the black wire here and the length of the white wire on the switch both need to be long enough that the switch can go to wherever you're going to mount it. And then we'll put a connector on there and crimp it down. Okay, so you should have something that looks similar to this. All your wires should be connected. And that's going to be long enough for where I need to mount my switch. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to test everything and make sure it works. So you can see I've got several different light bulbs on the table, and I tested all of these light bulbs, and none of them were bright enough except for this one, which is the one that I recommend that you go with. And it's the one that's in the description of the video. It's like $10 for a pack of 2, and it's super bright. And it's nice and small. So we'll just power that on. Boom. Good to go. So this is where I said that I had to cut the bracket, and what we're doing is we're basically going to cut this triangle out here on both sides of that bracket. And to do that, I had to uninstall the lamp from that bracket. So I had to pull the screws out from the inside of the lamp base. And I probably should have gone ahead and disassembled that threaded insert as well. Because let me tell you, this is really tight in here. I was working very hard to not cut any of the wiring. So there's the first cut. And then the second cut. And so that cut is almost straight down, and the second cut is more of an angle, coming from the edge of the bracket, the hanger, in. And that V or triangle that I just cut out of there is not big enough, because I'm bending the bracket now and it doesn't have enough angle on it yet. So I come back and cut a little more out of there. Then on this side of that bracket, it's kind of easy because you've got a hole drilled in there, and then you've got some index lines. On the other side, it's completely blank. So it's it's harder to judge what you're cutting into on the other side. But bend that, and it's almost at a 45-degree angle. So you can see this side is completely plain. So I'm just going to eyeball it. I mean, it's not rocket science, right? So we're going to cut that first straight, and then we'll do the angle. And I end up having to change the cutoff wheel on my Dremel or Fordham here. But you can easily see why you want to do this before you assemble all this together. I mean, you can leave it straight and then just bend it once everything's assembled. But we also are going to have to back that threaded insert to the left, because right now I had it threaded all the way down till it was touching the lamp base. And there's not enough room between it and the lamp base for the lamp base to be moved to the angle that we're bending the bracket. So I had to back it off about 1/4 of an inch so that there was enough space there. But yeah, fun. Now we're cutting that angle. So you can see it's kind of that triangle that we're cutting out of there. Just break that piece out. And then we can bend that bracket like so. So because they're bent and they're not like perfectly even or anything, lining up the screws coming through the lamp base and back into the bracket, you might have to play with those bracket ends a little bit to get them to line up. But here's where I'm realizing that the threaded insert is protruding too much out towards the lamp base. So we had to take the nut off the back of the threaded insert. And of course, everything is all wired together right now. And this is where we are thankful that we used removable Loctite and not permanent Loctite, because that threaded insert, it's on there pretty good. And I had to get a pair of vice grips and start playing with it and trying not to booger up the threads on it. And yeah. But I backed it out about 1/4 of an inch. And then got everything lined back up. So again, so much easier to just cut that damn bracket before you ever get to this point. And I didn't have duplicates of all these parts to show you the order in which I'm recommending you do it, but you get the idea, I think. And then we're going to go ahead and install the lamp back on the bracket, and trying to line up those holes. And then drop that screw in there. Tighten it down. Same thing for the other screw. Then we need to reinstall the lamp in the assembly. So Make sure you've got that ground between the lamp and the hanger, and push the threaded insert through the hanger and then the T-bracket. And then tighten that nut back down. And this will be final assembly, so you want to tighten that nut down really tight. I mean, don't strip it, but more than hand tight, I would say. And this is what you should have now. And we're just going to tidy up some of this wiring with zip tie. I really hope this is all making sense to y'all. And boom. So now we're just going to test fit everything. So depending on what you had to buy as far as tools and terminals and connectors and all of that, the basic parts for this should cost you less than 50 bucks. And that's pretty good for what it is, in my opinion. And if you decide to rig up your switch some other way, or just put an inline switch on the power cable itself, then, you know, you don't have to drill at all into your drill press head. This whole assembly would be completely removable and it'll work in your drill press regardless of 100 or a 150 series, and regardless of the attachments that you have, whether you've got a Vari-SLO or an MSA, doesn't matter. This won't affect either one of those. So that's how it's going to look. And that light bulb is going to kind of protrude from the bottom there. And here I'm just making sure that the wires are long enough for the switch. And you'll see me poke the switch through the side of the head. Right there. I can remember when I used to have a full head of hair. Man. And that, my friends, is the bracket. And this is it installed with a Vari-SLO. So you can see how bright it is there. You can see how it shines on the work surface. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe. You got any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. Like I said, check out the description of the video. It's got links and all the information you need to build this project. So as always, I appreciate the support, and I will see you next time.